You are frozen. Your mouth is open. The room is staring at you. And the silence just keeps stretching, longer and longer, like a rubber band about to snap. You know that feeling. That specific, horrible, stomach-dropping moment when words just disappear from your brain completely and all you can do is stand there, heart hammering, face getting hot, wondering if everyone in the room can see exactly how terrified you are right now. That moment has cost people promotions. It has ended presentations before they truly began. It has made brilliant, talented, deeply intelligent people look incompetent in front of the exact people they needed to impress most. And the worst part, the thing that nobody ever talks about, is that the silence itself was never the real problem. What destroyed them was the panic that came after it. Here's what I want you to understand before anything else. The most confident speakers in the world experience awkward silence too. Every single one of them. The difference between someone who falls apart and someone who commands a room is not that one of them never goes blank. The difference is in what happens in the 3 seconds after the silence hits. And once you understand what those 3 seconds actually look like, once you see what is really happening beneath the surface of a confident speaker's response, everything changes. Not in theory, in practice. In your next conversation, your next presentation, your next job interview, your next date, your next everything. But before we go deeper, I need to tell you something important. Everything we are covering today is a fraction of what people are learning inside a program linked right down below in the video description. If you have ever felt like the silence issue is just one piece of a much bigger puzzle around your confidence, your presence, your ability to communicate, that program is quietly transforming the way people show up in their lives. Most people scroll past it. They tell themselves they will check it out later. Later never comes. The ones who do not scroll past it, they are not the same people they were before. Just something to consider. Now, let us talk about what is actually happening to you when the silence hits. Your nervous system does not know the difference between standing in front of your boss and standing in front of a predator. That is not an exaggeration. That is neuroscience. When the silence drops and the eyes turn to you and your mind goes completely blank, your brain triggers the exact same threat response that kept your ancestors alive in dangerous situations. Your heart rate spikes. Your breathing gets shallow. Your prefrontal cortex, the part that forms coherent sentences, starts going offline because blood and resources are being redirected to your fight or flight systems. This is why you cannot just think your way out of a silent panic in the moment. You have probably tried. You stand there telling yourself to calm down and say something and it only makes it worse. That is not a personal failure. That is your biology working exactly as designed. It was just designed for a world that no longer exists. Here is where it gets interesting. Confident speakers do not calm down faster than you do. Their nervous system spikes just like yours. The research on this is clear. Even the most experienced speakers show elevated heart rates during moments of unexpected silence. What they do differently is they have trained themselves to interpret the silence differently before the panic response can fully take hold. Think about that for a second. They are not suppressing the fear. They are beating it to the punch by reframing what the silence means before their brain can catastrophize it. And this reframe is not something they do consciously in the moment. It becomes automatic, wired in, because they practiced it deliberately until it became their default response. Here is the reframe, and pay close attention because this is the core of everything. An amateur experiences silence and thinks something went wrong. A confident speaker experiences silence and thinks I am giving this room time to catch up with me. Read that again. Sit with it. The silence is not a gap. The silence is punctuation. And the moment you start treating it that way, your entire body language changes. Your posture stays open. Your eye contact stays steady. Your breathing slows naturally because you are not in panic mode. And the room reads all of that in real time and interprets you as someone who is completely in control. Here is a vivid way to think about it. Imagine watching someone conduct an orchestra. There are moments in the music where the conductor raises a hand and holds it and everything goes quiet. The entire audience leans in. Nobody thinks the conductor forgot what comes next. Everyone feels the weight and intention of that pause. The pause is the most powerful moment in the piece. Now imagine the conductor doing the same thing but with wide eyes and a nervous twitch. Same silence. Completely different meaning. The silence was never the issue. What surrounded it was everything. So, how do you actually train this into yourself? The first thing that confident speakers do is they own the transition. When silence appears unexpectedly, they do not fight it or rush to fill it. They own it by doing something subtle but powerful. They take one deliberate breath. Not a gasp. Not a visible struggle for air. Just one slow, intentional breath that tells their nervous system, this is not an emergency. Research in cognitive behavioral science consistently shows that a single controlled breath activates the parasympathetic nervous system within seconds. It physically interrupts the panic cycle before it can cascade. That one breath also buys them time without the room knowing they needed time. It looks like confidence. It feels like confidence to the person watching. And slowly, through repetition, it starts to feel like confidence to the person doing it. The second thing they do is they return to their anchor. This is something most people have never been taught, and it is genuinely one of the most powerful communication tools in existence. An anchor is a simple phrase, a thought, or a physical sensation that brings your mind back to the present moment and reconnects you to your message. Confident speakers have practiced an anchor so thoroughly that accessing it in a high-pressure moment takes almost no cognitive effort. For some people, the anchor is a single word, a word that represents the main point they are trying to make. When the silence hits and the mind goes blank, that one word pulls them back. Not to a memorized script, back to meaning, back to purpose. And when you are anchored in meaning, words tend to find their way to the surface naturally. For other people, the anchor is physical. The feeling of their feet on the floor, the weight of their hands at their sides, something concrete and real that grounds them in their body, rather than sending them spiraling into their thoughts. And here is the part that transforms people fastest. These anchors do not work the first time you try them under pressure. They work when you have practiced them so many times in low-stakes situations that they have become muscle memory. You have to earn them before you can use them. The third thing confident speakers do is they make silence social rather than isolating. This is a subtle shift with an enormous impact. Instead of experiencing the silence alone, they pull the room into it with them. They might look around slowly with genuine curiosity. They might nod slightly as if processing something interesting. They might redirect with a phrase as simple as, "Let me think about that for a moment because it matters." That last one is worth stopping on. Say it out loud right now. "Let me think about that for a moment because it matters." Feel what that does. It is not apologizing for the silence. It is explaining it with dignity. It tells the room that you are thoughtful, that you care enough about this conversation not to give a reflexive, empty answer. That is not weakness. That is the behavior of someone worth listening to, and the room respects it every single time. Now here is the emotional truth underneath all of this that I really want you to feel. People who struggle with silence are not struggling because they are bad communicators. They are struggling because somewhere along the way they learned that silence meant rejection, that a pause meant failure, that the room was judging them and finding them lacking, and that belief, that deeply held, often unconscious belief, is what created the panic, not the silence itself, never the silence itself. Think about the conversations you have avoided because you were afraid of going blank. Think about the ideas you held back because you did not trust yourself to speak without stumbling. Think about the version of yourself that never raised their hand, never took the floor, never said what they actually thought because the fear of silence felt too heavy to push through. That is not your fault, but it is costing you, and you know exactly what it is costing you. You have seen it in the promotions that went to someone louder, the relationships that stayed surface level because you could not hold a conversation without anxiety flooding in, the opportunities that slipped past because you seemed uncertain when you were actually the most prepared person in the room. The gap between who you are and how you come across is fixable, and it does not take years. People who commit to understanding these principles at a deep level, not just intellectually but behaviorally, practically, embedded into their nervous system, people report that their social confidence shifts noticeably within weeks. Not because they became different people, because they finally stopped working against themselves. The confident version of you is not a fantasy. It is already there. It has been suppressed by fear and misinformation and the absence of real tools. Give it the right environment and it will emerge faster than you think is possible. And that is exactly why, if you have made it this far, you owe it to yourself to look at the program linked in the video description below. Not because you need to be fixed, you do not, but because the fastest way to close the gap between who you are and how you show up is to stop doing it alone. Most people will not click that link. They will keep struggling with the same patterns for years, convincing themselves they will figure it out eventually. You know by now how that story ends. The people who do click it, who actually take the next step, they are the ones who look back 6 months from now and cannot believe they almost kept scrolling. Do not let today be the day you almost changed everything.